for the Clinton Museum. My name is Lillian, and today I'm interviewing Helen Cade, who's also a member of the Museum Society for much longer than me.
Much longer.
And so yeah, we'll begin with just a bit of background about your parents and where they came from and where you were born.
Okay. So you just want me to go ahead?
Yeah,
okay.
just
all right.
take it away.
My father was from France, and he came here after the First World. Actually, he came before the World War started in 1913, and when the war broke out, he asked to be sent back to France so he could join his regiment there because he'd been in the army. And then after the war was over, he came to Canada and lived here permanently. And my mother was born in the States, in Iowa, but her parents both came from Sweden. And then they moved in 1910, I think she moved to Alberta with her family.
Okay. And so where were you born?
I was born in Alberta, Provost, yes.
Okay. What year were you born?
Pardon?
What year?
What year?
Okay.
1932. Well, that makes me 90 years old.
You're the same age as my grandma, actually. Not too old. And so what brought you to Clinton, and did you move here with your parents, or did you move here later?
No, we left Alberta during the Depression, because, and we went to Armstrong, and from there, when the war broke out, there were jobs available at the coast, so we moved to the coast.
So what did your dad do for a living?
He became a machinist and worked at an airplane factory.
Okay. And so then how did you come to move to Clinton?
Oh, well, I never liked the city. We lived in the city and I hated it. And it was always my desire that someday I would get back to the country, and I knew that as a teacher, you were pretty well assured of a job in the country.
Yeah.
So that's what I did, and I deliberately, came here. I didn't come there.
Okay.
I first came to Ashcroft. That's where I was teaching.
Why did you choose this area and not Armstrong again?
Well, you put your name into where there's a place available, and I only put into country schools in the small towns, and then you pick one that you get a reply from. Yeah.
Okay. And what grades did you teach?
Usually anywhere 3 to 5. I like 5 best.
Okay.
They're just learning to be real little people then.
They're not so much trouble yet.
Yes, no. No. And yet you can talk to them. Yeah.
So what was the school like back then? It was it just an elementary school?
In Ashcroft they had 2 buildings, and the elementary was in the old building, which went back quite a number of years. I can't remember just when. And then they had a newer building that was the high school, and then eventually they had to get rid of the old building and they enlarged the high school.
Okay, so it was just, so you taught at the elementary school?
Yes.
Okay, and how many kids would you say there were?
Well, we had 4 classrooms, and sometimes we'd have 36 kids in a classroom, not like now.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I would say we probably averaged around 30.
30 from kindergarten to grade?
No, we didn't have kindergarten.
Oh, okay. From grade 1 to
grade 6.
Grade 6. Okay. That's pretty good. And so, how did you meet your husband?
I met him at a dance.
Oh yeah.
That was that's where all the entertainment was in those days. I don't remember particularly what dance it was, but it was in Asheville. Yeah.
Okay. And what year were you married?
We were married in 56.
Okay. So when the museum opened?
Pardon?
The year the museum opened. The same year that Avis Choate opened the Clinton Museum. 1956, wasn't it?
I'm sorry, I got that. I lost you in your.
Oh,
I hope you're cutting that out because my hearing just.
The same year the museum was opened was the same year you were married.
Oh, I guess it was about that time.
Okay.
Yes, that's right. I guess it was probably maybe that first year we were married that Avis did come to the house and looking for things. Yes.
Okay, and so Avis Choate came to the Doherty Ranch looking for artifacts, And so you became involved with the museum then?
Not really, no, because I was too far out of town.
Okay.
So I didn't know. It wasn't till later. And, but yes. She came looking for a specific piece of.
Yeah, can you tell us about the history of that pump organ?
Yes, Avis was looking for it was Elizabeth Doherty's organ, which they say he had brought up on the back of a mule from the coast, way back in the 1800s. Yes, she had been a hurdy-gurdy girl in Barkerville, and
Elizabeth?
she liked to dance and sing and play music, so that's why he got her the organ.
Oh, okay. That's really nice. And so after you became involved in the museum, when did you re-involve yourself with the museum?
Probably mostly, well, after I left the ranch and was living closer to town, yes.
Okay. And so what was it like being a young woman on a ranch? Did you take care of the animals yourself, or were you mostly child rearing?
Yeah, no, I didn't do too much with the animals. I never even did learn to ride a horse.
Really?
Believe it or not. Well, my husband never had time to take me, and I didn't come by it naturally. And he, in those days, he didn't ride for pleasure. You ride because you were working, and you didn't have time to teach somebody new. So yes, I always, of course, had a big vegetable garden, and did a lot of canning.
Okay.
As well as raising my children. Of course, we had chickens, and
Mm-hmm.
we had a milk cow, which I had to, separate the cream and make the butter and all that. So there was, and then of course, if we had lots of hired men, I was kept busy cooking anyway.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that I didn't have time to really spend out.
So what kind of cattle did you have on the ranch?
We sold yearlings mostly. A lot of people sell cows, but we raised ours to yearlings.
Okay. And what kind were they?
Well, mostly Hereford. It's a mixture, but mostly Hereford.
Okay. And so what was it like raising kids on a ranch?
There couldn't be a better life for them.
Yeah.
Which when I was left a widow when they were young, it was lucky. It was a good life for them, and I never, and they all loved that kind of life.
Yeah. And did your children go to school in Ashcroft or in Clinton?
Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah, the bus came to pick them up.
And what was the school like back then? What kind of things did they learn?
Well, the school was right here,
Right.
and then by the time my son got to high school, we had high school up there. But and actually, when my children, they didn't graduate from Clinton because there were a few years there that for grade 11 and 12 they had to go to Ashcroft,
Okay.
and so mine all graduated from Ashcroft.
Hmm.
But so school, and it was very much like the school at Ashcroft, and I used to do some subbing, and we didn't have kindergarten and all those things, but
Yeah. That's a bit of a commute. So from the ranch all the way to
10 miles.
Ashcroft, did you drive them every day, or was there a school bus?
oh no, I didn't teach after I was married.
Oh no, but when your children were in
Oh
grade 11
yes,
and 12.
no, the school bus when they were for grade 11 and 12. Yes, the school bus took them.
Okay.
Yes.
And so what can you tell us about the history of the Doherty Ranch? How was it founded, and what is its legacy? It's over 100 years old now, well over 100 years.
Yes, oh yes, yeah. Well, Edward Doherty, like everybody else, came looking for gold in Barkerville. He didn't
Okay.
find any gold, but I guess on the way through he had seen this nice little valley, and so he came there, and he didn't get any gold, so he came back and took up the land on Maiden Creek, and then, but he had met, I'm assuming he met Elizabeth when he was there in Barkerville.
Right, when she
And
was
then
dancing.
she came to Clinton and worked for Mrs. Smith, if I remember right, for a few years before she was actually married.
Okay.
And then they said, at one time, the old house was what they called a stopping house, where they had, travelers could stop and get their meals and feed their horses and whatever not.
Mm-hmm.
And then it burnt down in about 1952.
Okay.
So that is, the original house is gone. So some of those old buildings there are original, or right from way back.
And so how was the land claiming like back then? How did they stake their land? Did they just have to improve it?
Yes, you had to, I think you could get 160 acres, I think.
Is that a section?
A section,
okay.
Yeah. And then you had to make a certain amount of improvements in order to be able to keep the land.
Okay.
And as I understand, I think it was free, except as long as you improved on it.
So they had one section?
Yeah, to start with.
Okay.
Yes, and then and then there's a piece that you can't see that's about 4 miles up in the mountain, and that was taken out in 1870.
Okay.
And that's where my husband was buried there, and now we've got 4 or 5 people buried up there now.
So how big is the ranch today?
9, well, because my children have taken little pieces off, so it's I think just a little under 1,000.
Wow. Yeah.
As for the legacy of the ranch, how did your children take to ranching?
Well, that's all they've known.
Yeah, they grew up doing it.
But as I say, when their father died when they were fairly young, so luckily, the 2 older boys, he had taught them well. They knew.
Good.
I was surprised at what they knew. And
By 16, they were able to just take over.
A 13-year-old and a 16-year-old.
Holy cow.
Holy smokes.
The other 2 were only 8 and 9. But
And still going to school, high school, and...
Oh yes, they still went to school. They still did the chores. You just talked to Susan Hook.
Mm-hmm.
But when my husband first died, and the boys didn't have time to feed the cattle in the winter before the school bus came, so Susan's dad came and helped me feed. And
that's nice.
And in the summertime, the boys helped him with the haying.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody works together.
Nice.
Yeah.
So even though you only had a few neighbors, you still had a little community, a little...
Oh, yes. And actually my husband's sister and her family they bought a little piece of property just below us, between us and the Hooks. So so the kids, they did have friends.
Okay. And so obviously your grandkids one day are going to run the ranch.
I only have 2 grandsons, and neither one of them have any boys.
Oh,
so
no.
I don't know if the name is going to die out.
They better keep it going.
Yes.
For history's sake.
Ray that runs the ranch now, his son lives right there too.
Okay.
But he doesn't have any family, so.
Susan Hook had a lot of, she said her father was good friends with Red Ellison, and he would help them with the cattle sometimes, rounding them up. Did he also work on your farm or your ranch from time to time?
Did Red?
Yeah.
I don't remember Red ever being, a lot in my time, but yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
But yeah. Well, we had hired help most of the time, and then.
What, anybody who is still in town or their family still in town that worked for you?
Trying to think. I can't really think of anybody right now that most of the old friends are gone.
Okay. But cowboys are usually interesting characters.
Cowboys
are usually interesting historical figures.
Some of the hired men were just, they just went from one ranch to the others, and so some of them were characters, all right.
Do you have any funny stories or?
Well, we had one man he worked at various places, but he didn't like to shower or didn't like to bath or clean his clothes very often. But anyway, it seems one time he came to town here, and that was the laundromat right there. he came to the laundromat and somebody said he came in there, he stripped all his clothes off and washed his clothes.
Just stood there in his skivvies?
But it didn't seem to bother him at all.
That's funny.
But we had, yes, he was one of the more colorful characters.
You actually came to town the same year that Sven came to town.
Did he? I knew
Yeah.
I knew he was. I didn't know he'd just come then, but I knew he was just new here when I
Okay.
was. Yes.
Do you,
Yeah.
because we also interviewed Sven, so friends of the museum will remember Sven's interview as one of our more memorable ones. Do you remember anything about Sven from when you first met him?
Yeah, well, actually, you see, he worked for Pollard's, and they were my husband's uncle, John Pollard and Tom Pollard. They were my husband's uncles. So,
Okay.
yeah, so I had met Sven, and he had come to the house for something for the odd time. But he was the most shiniest, cleanest looking man you ever did see. He was just so polished. He shone on his
Really?
face. Yes.
What? That's amazing.
Yeah. Oh yes, I used to. Yeah.
Any other particularly memorable figures you remember meeting in your time here? Anyone who comes to mind
As
as
being especially memorable.
Probably a lot of people, but
Yes, there is. Yeah, I know my husband and Bill Cunningham were good friends from their younger days, and so he would be around sometimes, and I knew his parents too, and yeah, there were a lot of good old timers. The Colwells, of course, we knew all of them, and they were all the younger ones were my children's age, because there were quite a few, there were more of them than mine, but yes. So, and I'm sure have you interviewed any of them?
we were thinking of interviewing Evelyn Coldwell,
taking a road trip.
but
to
she lives up in
George.
Prince George.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the youngest one, Ray, lives here in town.
Oh yeah. Okay.
That's, yes, and some of them are gone now too, yeah.
So when did you move from the ranch into town?
Not till, my husband died in '73, and then the boys, and we just carried on from there, and my mother-in-law was still alive at that time too.
Did she live with you?
Pardon?
Did she live on the ranch too? Your
Yes,
mother-in-law?
yes, she lived on the ranch. and
Okay.
We had, when my husband died, I had to look after her too, sort of thing, and then I met Bud. Oh, it was about 9 years later before I met Bud.
Okay.
So I didn't marry. We got married when we were 50 years old.
Wow.
In 1982, we got married.
Okay.
And then by then the children, most of them had graduated. Kenny was the only one that was still in school, and the others were, so they stayed. And Chuck was already married by that time. So the other three stayed there, and then they eventually got married and moved away.
Okay. So when you got remarried, is that when you moved into your place in town?
Oh, no, Bud had a place 3 miles out on Kelly Lake Road.
Oh, okay.
So, and then we moved into town in '95.
Okay.
So-
did you have a ranch on Kelly Lake Road?
No, we just had
Just a house.
acreage. Yeah.
Okay.
What other organizations were you a part of here in Clinton? Were you besides the museum? Were you?
Lots of things. It's a Citizen of the Year. My
Citizen of
husband
the
and I were
Year.
Citizen
Yeah.
of
What
the
earned you
Year.
Citizen of the
And
Year?
because we both belong to a lot of organizations.
Okay.
Okay.
Like he belonged to the Legion and the Lions, and I belonged to the Elks. Charles and I belonged to the Elks and the Royal Purple, and then I was involved with the Catholic Church, and
Did you curl at all?
pardon?
Did you curl?
No, I tried it once, and I fell and hit my elbow, landed on my elbow. That was the end of the curling for me.
Okay, I gotcha.
And then of course the children were in 4-H,
Okay.
Right, yeah.
and that involved the parents too. At least in this Clinton 4-H, the parents were involved. They
Yeah.
didn't just send their kids to the meetings, they all took part. And then, yeah, and then later, some of my grandchildren were more into the high school rodeo. One of my granddaughters was high school rodeo princess and president of the.
Oh, nice.
of the high
What year
school.
was that?
Oh my. Well, she's about 27 now, well, probably about 10 years ago.
Okay. That's really nice. And, okay. So when you moved into town, you lived, you said near the post office?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, but
And
by
then,
that time Bud was retired, so
Okay.
we just.
and then you were a big part of getting the Clinton Creek Estates started up, weren't you?
No, I wasn't in. I didn't.
No.
I thought I already had enough things I belonged to, so I didn't join that one.
Was enough on your plate already?
But
Okay.
you know, a lot of my friends were, so right from the start, I knew more or less what was going on.
And
What-
you were one of the first residents?
Yes, I think they didn't want everybody to move in right at the beginning of the month, so they sort of staggered us up, so I think we came in the second week. Or
Okay.
I came in the second week.
What prompted you to become involved with the Clinton Museum?
Well, I think probably when Avis came and got that organ, you know, I realized then that, you know, that it was just going to be started. And as I say, because I lived out of town, I couldn't be active in it, but it wasn't until I moved out, you know, we were just 3 miles out of town, so I got involved then.
Okay. And what do you remember about the barn being moved across the lane?
The what?
The barn.
Oh, the barn, yes. Yes, that was a big undertaking, and the people at Clinton, you know, most of it was volunteer work. It was
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just too bad that the old sign, you do know the history of the barn.
Oh, yes.
That was but it's too bad the sign because it was quite clear before that it
Mhm.
said government stables.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And they're thinking
But
about
I
getting
think
it.
now because it faces the sun more,
Mhm.
it's
It's
all
faded.
faded out, which
When-
is too bad.
We're gonna eventually have it redone, and this time it will be done with paint that's a lot more resistant to the elements.
Mhm.
But I know when my husband worked for Highways, so it was part of their, and he said it was surprising the number of people, like they had their inspectors that came and inspected their buildings.
Hmm.
And so these guys, they all were there and inspected the building, and a couple of weeks later, another group came to inspect it. He said, well, it was just inspected. He says, yes, but they told us about this building, we just had to come and see it.
They just thought it was interesting.
So the highways, they kept it up, you know, they kept it in good repair.
Nice. And what changed in the museum while you were involved?
Mhm.
Well, there's been a lot of changes, yes, because, well, of course, they didn't have too much to start with, and then when they got the museum, and then they kept getting more and more outdoor displays,
Mhm.
and more cabinets and things that, yes, it did. It was just, Mike Brundage did, you know, he got a lot of new equipment from there.
Yeah.
He'd go places and talk them into getting it, I guess.
Was he a very convincing curator?
And Janet Lowe, at one time she was very involved too and kept things going.
Mhm.
Yes, we've had a good group there, and it's nice to see some young ones coming now. I wish I've tried to get my children. Well, of course, they'd never lived in town, so it wasn't that easy for them. But I wish they would get involved. But
Yeah.
maybe someday.
Well, we don't live in town either. We drive in all the way from the chasm. What are some businesses or things about Clinton that you remember from when you first moved here that have changed? What are some things that you miss about the past in Clinton?
Well, we missed Robertson's store. It was,
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, there was right up in the paper one day, and somebody had interviewed me and they got it wrong, and I should have said, it says in there that it was I remember the time when it was wood siding or something, and that wasn't what it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be wood sidewalks was what
The
Yeah.
boardwalks.
remembered.
Yeah.
Because, and the sidewalks were built about this far off the ground, and you had to go upstairs and got the,
Mhm.
and then all, all the stores along the front of the road, they had wood sidewalk, but theirs was raised. I guess that was so when they unloaded the freight trucks and stuff,
Mhm.
it was easier to
Okay.
put things in the store, I imagine, was the idea.
And they would drive cattle just through the main street,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Oh, and the sheep.
And the
Did
sheep.
anybody talk about it? Somebody
Yeah.
else talked, yes. Oh, that was very interesting and quite, they would often bed there for the night just across from the ranch house. They asked if they could just bed them down there for the night. And they would have their fires going and the sheep herders, and if they had a lame one, they would, and that couldn't walk anymore, they would give it to us.
Mhm.
Did you ever go to the Clinton Hotel?
No, I never was in there.
It was only open for a couple years.
Yes, it was only,
Yeah.
it was, in fact, it was the summer my son was just a baby. 'Cause
When it
we
burned
came
down.
to town to the ball, and it was still smoldering.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you remember any memorable fires in Clinton?
There were quite a few.
Yes, there was one about where the corporeal is, I guess.
Yeah.
About in there, you heard about
Yes,
that when the little girl was, yes, and they could see her in the
Upstairs
yeah.
window. Yeah.
That's
Yes,
so
and she was
sad.
in the same grade as one of my children. So
Mm.
that was sad,
Yeah.
yeah.
Anything besides the Robertson store that you miss in town?
Listen, well, we had a drugstore at one time, which was nice. We had, where the the bank is now was the Greyhound bus depot. And they also were the florists. They would bring, if you wanted flowers, they had all the books and you could order, and they would bring flowers in. And so, like in those days, when it was ball time, all women wore corsage. They didn't. So
notes,
they
Nick.
did good business in those months.
Yeah.
And Parky's store, the building is still there, but it was quite a they were both a couple of characters, yeah. So. And I'm sure Helen knew the name or the birth dates and the wedding dates of everybody in town, and she would get the men to come in, and she'd say, "Oh, well, your wife would like this," or she was
That's smart.
She was good at that.
Yeah.
Nice.
And what are some things
She
that
never forgot anybody, like the old timers who it was.
everybody's names, everybody's everything. What are some changes that you've seen that you've actually liked?
Like them?
Mhm.
Well, of course, this building, the park was, it was just actually one of the ranchers donated that land.
Oh, yeah?
Lloyd West donated the land because it was part of his, and they're improving it, and it's
really nice.
It's nice, yes, and the playground is quite new, as you can see. There was the Elks that had quite a bit to do with putting the playground in. And of course, I guess for those who like to skate and curl, that's a great thing. That's not my thing, and because my children didn't live in town, they didn't really use it that much.
So there was an Elks Club and a Lions Club in town?
Mhm.
And then where
It
did
was
they
all-
go?
Pardon?
What happened?
I think it's just a thing that's sort of dying out, I think. I don't know why so many of the small towns closed up, because they just didn't get, there wasn't enough interest anymore. And yet they both do a lot of good work, a lot of,
Yeah.
but it is a shame that but I guess, times change.